Be the envy of the neighborhood. 860 KKAT, where the grass is always greener. Welcome to Gardening Utah. Here's composter and show hoster, Jana Francis.
Welcome to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis. Every week here on Gardening Utah, we give you gardening inspiration and advice from experts across the state. We talk about vegetables, flowers, trees, shrubs, and of course, your lawn. Thank you for listening. I hope this show is something that you'll look forward to checking in with every week. Whether you're a beginner or an expert, Gardening Utah aims to inspire you and keep you in the know of what tasks you should be accomplishing in your yard and meet amazing, informative experts along the way. This show airs on the radio on the weekends here in Utah at 10 a.m. on 860 AM KKAT, and episodes drop every weekend on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, so hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. On today's show, Cameron, Allcott, and I are going to talk about fall planting. And first of all, can we just talk about the fact that it's September? I mean, where did August go? It was like 3 total days long. At least it seemed like it. I just can't believe how fast August flew. And we are already turning the corner, looking into fall. And, you know, to be honest with you, fall is the best time to garden. There's a lot of misconceptions about when you can plant, if it's too late. And Cameron and I are going to go through all of that with you today. Whether you're wanting to plant trees, shrubs, perennials, even some annuals, and even vegetables. Listen to this episode because I think you'll be inspired, you'll be in the know, and you'll be able to correct all your friends and neighbors when they tell you it's too late to plant. But first, the tip of the week.
860 KKAT with your Gardening Utah tip of the week.
My tip of the week is, when is the best time to transplant daylilies? Well, daylilies are a little bit more versatile than iris as far as when you can plant them and when they're going to bloom next. So daylilies, or Hemerocallis, are among some of the most versatile and forgiving perennial flowers there are. They grow and divide under almost any conditions. They'll grow in the sun, they'll grow in part shade. They do extremely well in a lot of different conditions, and the more sun they get, the more they bloom. Although if it's a really dark colored daylily, they should be planted where they get a little bit of afternoon sun so that those beautiful blooms do not fade and they last a little bit longer during the day that the lily blooms. So they bloom the year they're planted, and they rapidly spread and produce large plants with many of their blooms. So daylilies can be planted in early spring or early fall. Although they do tolerate being transplanted at any time of year, it just impacts when it's going to bloom. So right now, about 6 weeks before the first frost really becomes established, is a great time to transplant daylilies. When the soil temperature is moderate, it really helps them become reestablished more quickly. And if they're transplanted in early spring, they may still bloom that year, but it's not guaranteed. But now there's the time of year that you can transplant daylilies, but when is the best time as far as how old the plant is? Well, you can transplant daylilies anywhere between 3 and 5 years, but really you're going to want to kind of watch it, because the best time to divide a clump of daylilies is when it becomes too dense and it will just start to produce fewer flowers. And that's when you know, okay, this clump really needs to be divided. So to divide that plant, you dig up the clump, shake the soil off, use like a spading fork or maybe a weeding tool, and that will help you pull the clump apart in sections that contain a big grouping of those fleshy roots and at least one big fan of leaves. So 3 or 4 fans is what I like to go with, because the plant will become reestablished more quickly. I don't like to separate them down too little, because I kind of like them to, like I said, have a better chance of reblooming next year. And then from that point, you're going to want to cut the leaves back about 6 inches. Also, really important, when you do dig up a bed of daylilies, you're going to really want to watch for pests. So snails, huge pest of daylilies that really love to hide way down in there in the crowns when you can't really see them in between those leaves. And I just like to make sure that when we do divide daylilies, that we really remove all of that extra plant material, so that you're disrupting the life cycle of whatever pests are down in there. Now, if you are replanting daylilies into a bed where you're not getting a lot of blooms and you think it's because there's a little bit of poor soil, make sure to replant the daylilies with about 2 inches of compost on the top of that soil and dig or till the compost down to about 10 inches. So you're really going to want to just amend that soil with some compost so that those daylilies can live in healthier soil and hopefully do better in the future. So once you've prepared your soil, what I like to do when I plant the daylilies, I like to do them about 18 to 24 inches apart. And when I'm digging the hole, I make the hole big enough to where the roots can go straight down into the soil. And you're going to want to make, I kind of do, it's like a cone, kind of a reverse cone of soil in the middle of that hole. And then I spread the roots around the cone. And that makes it to where the daylily is a little bit more established. And I plant those daylily divisions so that the crown, where the place where the leaves meet the roots, is about an inch or less underneath the soil. And then obviously from the soil around the roots, and give it a good watering. Now, anytime you're going to be doing this, you're going to want to keep an eye on those roots. You're going to want to keep them moist for at least a few weeks until you feel like they've become established. So I'm going to go out this weekend. I'm going to be transplanting some of my daylilies. I have a couple different beautiful clumps of really pretty colors that I've purchased from like farmers markets and things. And, if you don't have extra room to plant those extra daylilies, a lot of times neighbors love to add them to their yard, or you can just give me a call.
And that's your Gardening Utah tip of the week, brought to you by the Advocates. If you're in an accident, you deserve an advocate. Call 801-355-5550 or visit UtahAdvocates.com. Never miss a tip for your garden and never miss an episode. The Gardening Utah Podcast with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT.
You can bring me those daylilies for sure. I'm guarantee I have a place to put some in my yard. I love daylilies, especially some of the more rare varieties that are a little bit more ruffly, and I just have so much fun with them. So that's what I'm going to be doing this Labor Day weekend, is dividing up my daylilies. To be honest with you, I wish I would have gotten it done a little earlier, but as long as we don't have a crazy frost and freeze in like mid-October, then they should have plenty of time to get established in this cool weather and turn out really, really beautifully. Okay, so before we get into today's episode with Cameron and talk about fall planting, I wanted to remind you of some good stuff. It is almost your very last chance to enter to win a 4x8 raised garden box from Q&R Box Garden. Here is how you enter. Go to 860kkat.com and click the contest link, and you can sign up there to be entered to win. And you know what? They install it and they deliver it, and this is almost your last chance to enter to win. So definitely give that a go. And as always, good luck. Now listen, also episode notes. I have the link to the contest there. And I also have links to really good deals that you can find on garden stuff. A lot of good links in there. So always check out the episode notes on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you're listening. And Gardening Utah Instagram. That's where I love to chat with you guys. I love to get messages from you guys and questions. I'm starting to get more and more, so I'm trying to keep up on them. But seriously, I think I'm going to do a Q&A episode, either next episode or the episode after. So send me some questions and we'll get them answered for you on the show. I mean, I'll read out your name and give you a shout out and all the good stuff. So Gardening Utah on Instagram. Check us out and give us a follow. Well, you know what? Cameron has some news for us. Let's listen up.
The Progressive Plants Proven Winner of the Week.
And this week's Proven Winner of the Week is the Hibiscus Purple Pillar Rose of Sharon. This is actually one of my new favorite introductions that Proven Winners has done. It is a Rose of Sharon that is completely columnar. It grows about 10 feet tall, gets about 2 to 3 feet wide, and is the only columnar shrub that I know of that actually flowers. And it will flower from about July up until about the middle of October, where you'll still get some blooms on it. But there's so many applications for this plant where you can stick them in little tight places. Or if you want to actually get really creative and buy a whole bunch and start creating rooms that you can just create with these plants, when you just plant a whole bunch of them in a square or in a line, or you can create these beautiful swirls and curves into the landscape. It is one of the most versatile landscape plants that you can use.
She's more than just gardening puns and sage advice. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT. Gardening Utah, available wherever you get your podcasts and at 860kkat.com/garden. here's Jana Francis.
Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, and I've got Cameron with me today, and we are talking about fall planting. And Cameron, I just saw on Facebook that you had just done the coolest design work at this house that had no flowers. What?
I know, right? It's such a strange concept coming from me because I'm always talking about hydrangeas and hibiscus and butterfly bush and all of these things that have flowers all the time. And all I want to do is have color all the time from like May to September, So, I kind of got sucked into a design project. I don't do a ton of them anymore. I don't really have time to really dedicate to it. But these lovely people approached me about 3 years ago, and they couldn't quite, make it all work. And I ran out of plants because it was really late in the year. And so they were trying to get a particular contractor to install it, who's like one of the most amazing contractors that I've ever worked with. They just had like this really like modern contemporary style house. I mean, it's very blocky, cool architecture to it. The owner, she just really isn't into florals. She has like really bad allergies. I think that's probably part of it. But she likes structure. She likes color. She likes things. And I spent some time looking at the house, and I just looked at it and I'm like, this thing screams texture, foliage color, patterns, and just different combinations of things. So I looked at it, I'm like, I wonder if I could design a house without flowers. So I did. I know, and no Carl Forster grasses either. So
even better.
Yeah, it's turning out like just absolutely beautiful. They're going to be putting the finishing touches on it here in the next couple of days. Getting like all the mulch in and all the drip irrigation in. So, just a lot of grasses. I did use a few things that have like minimal flowers, like some hostas. I've used like a lot of laced up elderberries. But the flowers are really very inconsequential on those. So most of the interest is going to be coming from the foliage and just the sheer quantity of the varieties that I used is really cool. I mean, I think like the minimum number I used of a variety of plants is like 22.
What?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, rows upon rows and or patterns of things like Festuca idahoensis, which is like a blue type of fescue type thing. It's a little bit more drought tolerant here for Utah. Some Japanese forest grass. I did some carex. Sometimes it's known as sedge. And again, laced up elderberries, some Japanese maples, hostas up to wazoo, and just plants that just have like really cool structure to it. I got the opportunity to use a slender silhouette sweet gum, which is not a tree that I would normally pick in a lot of situations, but this one just kind of screamed for it. And then my new favorite grass that I'm really trying to kind of, push the envelope on a little bit. It's called, the Latin name is an andropogon. The common name is big blue stem, and the variety is called Blackhawk. Ooh. It is so cool because It is upright. Yeah, it is. It's upright, and it has like a little bit of green tinge to it. But as the foliage matures, it turns black.
Oh my word!
Yeah.
Send me the link to that, and I'll put it in the episode notes.
I will do so.
Because I know the people who are listening are like, I'm not going to remember this and I can't rewind. So here we go.
I know.
I'll put it in the episode notes.
The funny thing is I've known about this grass for a long time and I've seen it before. And, when I went to Spring Meadow Nursery a couple of months ago that we had that episode about, I saw them all in a line around the statue of a horse that was supposedly like what Leonardo da Vinci did. And they looked incredible. I mean, they were the best looking grass I've ever seen as far as like structure, airiness. The flower wasn't like obtrusive at all. And I just had never seen anything like it. And I'm like, why aren't we using this? Why do we not use this more?
Yeah.
Why do we use this gas station grass called Carl Forster, and plant that everywhere?
And people, if you don't know what we mean, no offense to Mr. Forrester, but But
It was Carl Forrester is a very interesting history, by the way. So.
Oh, see, I don't know nothing. I don't know anything about Carl, so I apologize to Carl if he hears this. Just kidding. I'm sure this is not. But that being said, not a fan of the grass. It looks like a fall. What it looks like to me is like a fall wheat arrangement all year long, which basically means it looks dead in your landscape to me.
Yeah. I mean, I understand why people use it. I mean, it's one of the first grasses that come up in the spring.
Yeah.
And it just gives you solid performance from about like March until October. And then if you can leave it up during the winter too. So like, I get it.
That's true. It does provide some pretty cool winter interest, and in the fall, it does look pretty cool.
Yeah. But like I said, I get it. It's just, I mean, it's just, everybody just uses it. And I'm tired of looking at it. I'm tired of growing it. I grow like 50,000 of those a year. And I'm like, I grow 100 of everything else, so I'm just like, I'm over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but people like what they like and it's fine, but there's just so many other cool grasses that are out there. So,
okay. So I saw in the photo that you posted, it looked like a tree form of a tree, like a topiary almost. And it was either like juniper-y or like blue atlas cedar-y.
Oh,
what was that?
Okay, so you're probably thinking of a juniper that's on a standard. I've been hanging on to these plants for months. I've been fighting off my other salespeople trying to use these and other designers. So they're actually a Dobbs frosted juniper. So the juniper actually is yellow and green. And they've grafted it about 24 inches up. So, and the juniper itself grows horizontally and then starts to cascade down. So it looks kind of like a bicolor cousin as it matures.
I was like, okay, I need one of those. Looks
yeah,
cool.
You kind of do. I know. I've got plans for your house when we get around to it.
Okay, good. Phew.
I already know I walked out of your property. I know what I was going to do.
Exactly. And we need to YouTube that when we do it. We should do it now.
We should, because like now is like the best time to plant, like bar none.
Exactly. Intro the topic of this episode, fall planting, right?
Right. And that's exactly why I'm doing the project that I'm doing now, is because it's an ideal time to plant. The temperatures aren't that bad. We've got a good 6 weeks before plants start to go dormant. And what most people don't realize, and I've talked about this before, like on the Facebook pages and whatnot, I've always felt that planting in the fall, you are really just trying to get your plants established before the following summer. So the more time that you can give your plants before the next heat wave is actually better for your plants than trying to plant in the spring and then giving them 2 months before they have to deal with 157 degree temperatures, and hellfire and brimstone,
Right.
So, if you can give them like 9 months of an establishment period, your plants will perform so much better. And believe it or not, the nurseries have probably more availability now on a lot of things, or at least mine does, than they would have at other times of the year. So use a lot of perennials, a lot of grasses, shrubs, and trees that are just awesome. Fruit trees are always kind of hard late in the season, but if you're looking to get to that project in your yard or start landscaping and get it installed, like you should drop whatever you're doing and just go start digging holes and slamming plants in the ground.
Yeah, literally. Well, and I've seen this question so much in the last couple of weeks, like, oh, is it too late to plant? And it's like, wait a minute, no, we're just getting started.
Yeah. I mean, the plants right now that we're cooling off, plants really don't like being in 100 degrees. They don't even like being in like 90, 95 degrees, but they will actively be growing at between 80 and 90. And about this time of year is when they start pushing another round of root growth, like into the ground, which will help with the establishment. And you're not fighting with water all the time. I mean, you can get by with watering your plants, like maybe every other day here in the beginning. And then we're going to get down into the 70s and then the 60s. And then you're backing off to like every 2 to every 3 days.
Yes.
Okay. The only caveat that I will say about planting in the fall is that really you should be watering your plants longer into the fall and the early part of winter, like December-ish, than you would for an established landscape. Because again, even though they're putting out some root growth, it's generally not enough to really tap into the groundwater and, keep the plant hydrated. So you want to end up watering like maybe once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks into November and December.
Yeah.
Usually not hard.
No. And I think that is one thing that people do not realize is that newly established plants do need moisture through that winter.
They do. They definitely do. And I think Utah is a little bit hard because of our weather patterns. I mean, we can freeze really hard in October, and that's not like, it doesn't really hurt the plants that much, unless we go from like 70 to like 2. Yeah. That's bad. But it's, people like to blow out their sprinkler lines earlier so that like the sprinklers don't blow up, because that can happen at around like 27 and below. It'll, crack your sprinklers or drip tubes or anything like that. So, so people blow them out. I feel like a little bit too early, but again, you're kind of playing a dangerous game by waiting till like November.
Yeah.
But if you can just bring yourself to hook a hose up to your faucet of your house and just go hand water stuff. It doesn't have to be a lot of water. It just has to be some, but just go hand water your stuff. Hopefully it only takes you like maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes or something like that tops. And then just unhook your hose from your house, because don't leave hoses on houses when it freezes. That's bad. Not that I have ever done that.
You don't sound experienced in that at all.
Nope, not even. I never make mistakes gardening. So, but yeah, if you can just give a little bit of water, like you are home free. Like it's almost like you're even skipping a year of establishment for your plants. Because I'm sure a lot of you have heard the term, like, first year sleep, second year creep, third year like leap, right? When you plant that first year in the fall, you're skipping that sleep year. Okay. So they just go crazy next year. And then, so you almost like gain a year of experience on your plants. I mean, you'll feel like you just like leveled up in gardening. It's pretty cool.
I love this. And of course, everyone, for the beginning gardener, we need to remind that we are talking just about perennials and shrubs and trees. We're not talking about annuals. Obviously, the time has come and gone for most annuals, right?
Maybe.
Like what?
Depends on if you're planting like for fall color or not.
Well, that's a really good point. And let's discuss that right after this break. And we'll be right back here on Gardening Utah. Stay with us.
860 KKAT with Jana Francis and Gardening Utah, where it's always mulch time. She really does have the nicest yard on the block. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT.
Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, and I've got Cameron Allcott with Progressive Plants, and we're talking fall planting. And right before the break, we were discussing that, when we're talking fall planting, the most things that we're talking about is trees, shrubs, and perennial plants, but there are some annuals you could still do for color and things. What do you think, Cameron?
Well, I've just had my life like turned around, and I'm questioning everything that I've ever known just after meeting with like Nikki over at Botanicals over in Kaysville and Sandy, where they have like all those containers. Yep. And she just it's funny because like she's working with me on this job that I'm installing like over in Holiday with like no flowers. So we decided to do with the home, what I decided to do with the homeowner, I'm like, look, if we want to bring in flowers, like let's do it with containers, like, florals and tropicals and whatever, and all that type of stuff. Enter Nikki.
Right.
So I get her on the phone. This is her specialty. I mean, she knows more about container design than I do, because I don't grow containers the same way that she does. So she's just like, packing things in here. And we have like 6 weeks left in the season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's packing these containers full of things that are actually like pretty tolerant of cold weather. So like petunias, for instance, or calabricoas, anything in that family, I mean, they'll tolerate temperatures down to like 27.
Yeah.
And still hold some color.
Yeah.
So you can carry those into October. There's a lot of grasses that you can use to have like a structure to them. Even though if they quote unquote die, they still have an interesting structure to them. And you can still use like ornamental kale, for instance, like anything that has like that type of texture. I've seen people keep like, gourds on vines and whatnot, just because I mean, it's not so much about like the greenery, but it's about like the texture and the change. And there's some things where just, as we get frost, it just looks really cool as it attaches to various pieces of dead vegetation or dying vegetation. So there's still like an element of beauty in the transition from, life into winter. I'm not going to say death. I'm just going to say life into winter. Dormancy. Yep. Hibernation.
Yeah, there you go.
I go to Mexico.
I go to Jamaica or the Caribbean.
That's what we should do. We should just do a trip down there.
You'd love Jamaica.
I'm sure I probably would one day. So anyway, I mean, there's just things, I mean, I've really started to try to think like a little bit outside the box when it comes to like design and implementation of different things. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So, but what about you, Jan? I mean, is there anything that you're doing with in your garden? Because I know you grow a lot more food than I do. I use food little bit differently, which we can talk about later.
Yeah, totally. Well, I could talk for hours about how much I'm harvesting right now for my vegetable garden. But with regard to fall planting, right now I'm picking a lot of beets, and I did not grow beets in my garden this year in like the allocated raised boxes. I don't like to do root vegetables in raised boxes anyway, but I know some people do, some people don't. I don't prefer to, but I have the beginning of the season, I planted spinach and, the spinach I've already harvested, but with regard to what I'm harvesting now, I've got this cool little pathway in my front yard that kind of goes along the curvature of my grass. And the first stuff that I planted up against it was Swiss chard and beets.
Oh, wow.
And it's just the coolest looking plant anyway, right? They're beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
leaves. I mean,
yeah, they're great.
Swiss chard has yellows and reds and purples and beautiful greens, of course. And they, have a totally different texture than a lot of the other plants in the garden. So I kind of did a row of those and a row of beets, and my beets are like perfecto right now. So I'm starting to pull those out. And what I'm going to do, because there's, like you said, there's still a good 6 weeks before our first potential frost. By the way, I can't even believe it. It's freaking September, right?
I know, right?
What happened to August? I mean, I only saw you once the whole month. Huh?
I don't know.
Anyway. Maybe busy. Twice. No, wait, that's not true, because at the beginning of the month, we went to Red Butte and to to botanicals and a lunch. Anyway, yep. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we actually saw each other quite a bit, but it just didn't seem like it was like longer. Yeah,
I know. August just flew. It literally flew. But anyway, so I'm going to plant radishes there, because radishes are really like a 28-day crop, and the ground is already, when I pull out the beets, the ground's ready to go. Just add a teeny bit more compost and put in some radishes. Now, radishes, they're not as pretty, but who cares at this time of year? It's just utilizing the space that's already ready.
Right.
You could also, in that way, tuck in, pansies, because there's a lot of nurseries that have the pansies right now if you didn't start your own from seed, and they'll come back perfectly in the spring, even though they're technically an annual. Pansies is that one plant that really likes the cold, hates the summer. And so you could tuck in little pansies all over the place. But I'm really experimenting lately with getting just vegetables around the garden in places that you'd normally put annuals,
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, Liz Hamilton, you know her, our friend Liz, she does something very similar. She plants vegetables, I wonder if you could get like a lot of like your lettuces and different brassicas at this time of year. I bet you could plant some of those. They're cool weather crops.
Oh, you absolutely could. Yes. You would get some lettuce and spinach. this time
right
of year.
before it freezes. Yeah. Oh,
Yes.
you could totally do that.
Yep.
So she was doing that early in the season, and I went to her house in her new brand spanking new backyard. And I was like, wow, looks so cool. And Cynthia Strigham, who's, Instagram star with the Bellin monologues. And, she does that, but she does it more with like artichokes and dahlias and onions and sweet peas and all that type of stuff. She incorporates all of that food stuff, and then I was like, oh, this is actually a really cool idea. So I started to do the same thing this year. I don't even grow food, because usually the last thing I want to do when I go home is like more planty stuff. Right. I want to like watch a show or eat dinner maybe. So at my girlfriend's house, I've been slowly kind of like fixing her landscape because it was pretty bad when she bought the house like 2 years ago. So I've just been kind of like adding experimental plants in and stuff, and just kind of like doing different things with it, stuff that I just want to do, just because she lets me do what I want. And so this year, again, like strangely, coincidentally enough, so like Nikki, she was like just giving away her veggies that like towards the end, that didn't sell.
That's
from
right. I remember that. She needed the space in the greenhouse.
Exactly. So I just was like, well, I'll take this problem off your hands for you. And I took them and I planted them everywhere. Oh. And it ended up looking so cool because now I have like melons growing up a spruce and, different squash just like kind of covering all of the ground. And it looks so cool with all of like the really colorful foliage and flowers that I have everywhere in my girlfriend's garden beds or planter beds. And it's also been like a weed control for me too, because it's shading out everything. And it looks amazing to just have like these big yellow flowers just hanging off of a spruce tree,
Oh man, that's cool.
And it looks really cool. So now I'm thinking, you know what? Every single year, I'm just going to start incorporating, different edible type things into the garden space with all of my ornamentals. I mean,
and vegetables have this way of like finding the space they need in the weirdest places, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they just, especially like the viney type things. They're not hurting anything. I've got like cucumbers all growing around stuff. And the other thing too, is that like, I was watching one of the garden guys and gals videos from the USU Extension Service.
They're going to be up on the show coming up soon.
Oh, really? Like Sheridan and JD?
Sheridan.
Oh, Sheridan is a riot. She's really cool. I love watching her videos. So I did like the trellis video or the trellis tomato thing, because I was like, I've never done that before. So I'm like, I'm going to go do that, So, totally. And so I did it, and like, it's so cool, like, I love I love like what USU Extension Services are doing. It's so cool. Cause like I'm learning so much just by watching those videos.
They're so amazing.
When are they coming on?
Probably next week or the week after. Yeah.
I'm so jealous.
I'm so excited.
Can you zoom me in and just like mute my microphone? That way they can't hear me like fangirling over here.
That's amazing. Yeah, why not? Hey, the more the merrier, right? And so, look, in my backyard, I've got, where my my concolor fir is? All around there, I planted tomatillos, and then and those kind of look cool because they kind of look like Chinese lanterns in a way, but they're green,
Yes.
So I chucked down some tomatillos. Those, I'm going to have so much tomatillo salsa. It's going to be insane. And then I did up against the fence that goes over onto the side of the river. That's where I did all my orange glow watermelons. And they just went through the fence, and then they're just going into that one separate like sovereign land part that's up against the river. And it just looks so pretty because watermelons aren't that invasive with the leaves. But once you start getting those big watermelons everywhere, they're just so cool looking. So. Oh
yeah. Well, I love the fruit. Like, even like Armenian cucumbers. I love the look of how those work and the ridges and the texture and how they hide. Yes. You move a leaf and you're like, whoa, what is that? That's the size of a Volkswagen Beetle,
Exactly. Totally. I found that same thing with zucchini yesterday where It's an egg-shaped zucchini, and I go out every day and I double check, because if you pick them a lot, you get smaller ones, a little more manageable. And I find this bowling ball sized monster at the very bottom of the plant that I never once noticed. And you want to know how I noticed it? And this is a new trick, and I took a video to post it. You go out at night with your either headlamp or your iPhone light, and you can see stuff that hides in the shadows during the day in the sun. And I found like 5 more tomatoes that I wouldn't have normally found during the day, just like hidden inside, because something to do with the light really makes the color of the vegetable stand out. And so that's my new thing. Like right after I coop up the chickens, give it like 10, 20 minutes, and then walk around with my light when it's dark. And I find so much more stuff. Anyway, we'll come right back after this break right here on Gardening Utah. Stay with us.
She's more than just gardening puns and sage advice. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis on 860 KKAT. 860 KKAT with more of the fastest growing show on radio. It's Gardening Utah with Jana Francis.
Welcome back to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis, hanging out today with Cameron Allcott with Progressive Plants. And we're talking fall planting because I just seriously cannot believe it is freaking September. I just can't believe it. I don't know what happened to August, but it was like only 3 days long.
Wait, it's actually September?
I know.
I thought it was still August.
I know, seriously. It's actually September. So, Cameron, we were talking a little bit about, okay, you can plant trees, shrubs, and perennials in the fall. There's a handful of annuals that will make it to next spring, like, pansies
like the pansies
and a lot of other things that you can put in for color right now, like obviously mums and a lot of other things that you see at the store, ornamental kale, lots of veggies like lettuce, spinach, beets, radishes. But is there anything that we should not be planting right now?
There's a handful of things that I don't feel like I have like a great deal of success with going late into the season. And right now, I feel like you're pretty much safe planting anything. It doesn't matter. You just throw it in the ground, get it in like right now. Once you hit about October 15th, that's where I'm like, okay, let's maybe not look at a couple things like warm season grasses. A lot of times will struggle if you plant them too late. So anything with the Miscanthus genus, also known as maiden grass, pennisetums, those are your fountain grasses a lot of times. I've noticed like red yuccas, like the Hesperaloe, sometimes don't really like getting planted late either. And a really popular one that people love to seem to plant in Utah, I don't know why, I hate them, but arbovitas. I've seen some pretty horrific results with people who plant those really late into the season because they are such a water heavy plant right at the time that you're turning off your sprinklers. Like I've seen people buy like 80 of these and have like 50 of them die over the winter. Yes. So it's just one of those things where I probably wouldn't move a ton of those unless you are going to make the commitment to really water them, maybe even into January. You're watering them all winter long. Because the one thing to realize is that if we do get like a lot of snow and it stays cold, that snow is in an ice form. So it's not penetrating the ground and getting into the roots in a quantity for, something like an arborvitae to take up. It's like, I think I've used this analogy with you before. It's like sucking an ice cube up through a straw. You can't do it. Well, if you can, then you're a millionaire because that's, you're on America's Got Talent at that point. So I think that's one of those shows, right?
Yes, it is.
But really for the most part, like your perennials though, like your cool season grasses, like, your fescues, calamagrostis, like your Carl Foresters that we talked about, how much I hate those earlier. Those are actually, great to actually plant late into the season. They'll just pop up the next year and be absolutely fantastic. But again, if it's like a warm season grass, so if you're going to go buy something, ask your nursery representative wherever you go to. If you go to Progressive Plants, great. That's awesome. But, if you're going somewhere else, that's totally fine. Just ask, to see if it's like a warm season grass or a cold season grass, because that may kind of influence your decision, especially if you are planting late into the season, like, beyond October 15th. That's when we should maybe kind of start second guessing a little bit about what you're doing.
Yes. And you got to commit to watering it. You just got to. You hate seeing those things die. I remember seeing a picture like that recently where it's like, what happened to this whole row? And I think in that case it was juniper, but it's like, it was just so obvious that most of them didn't get water over the winter.
Yeah. And I see that a lot with, I see it a lot with boxwoods. I mean, that's another like really popular landscape plant here in Utah. I mean, it's funny. It's like Utah, the second driest state in the union, has this like weird thing with broadleaf evergreens.
I know.
But if you go into virtually like any other state, like Colorado doesn't use boxwoods hardly at all.
Really?
Like I never see them. No, I never see them over there. You don't really get them in Wyoming because they don't really like live there. You see them like a little bit in Boise, but I'm seeing less and less over there. It really seems like the Intermountain West is really trying to embrace the water wise, save the pollinators, wildflower, these types of mixes. Like it's kind of moving into a different style of landscaping. And it feels a little bit like Utah is like lagging behind a little bit. Just because I think it might be, I don't know why, maybe it's just like our heritage because, most of us came from like New England, like the pioneers and, coming through like, right? Missouri and, whatnot. So maybe it's just what we know, all that we know, So,
or we watch too much Garden Answer.
Oh yeah. Or we watch too much Garden Answer, but Laura is like, she's just outside of Boise. I mean, she's on the very eastern end of Oregon. It's pretty dry up there.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I just noticed, I believe she has a lot of boxwoods.
She does.
Yeah.
I don't know if she should, but she does.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
She's in a pretty dry spot.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's still Oregon. So anything grows in Oregon. So,
yeah.
And even Boise has got a pretty good growing area too. Utah is probably the most challenging place that I've ever seen.
Wow.
Bar none.
So see, Utah, if you're having a successful garden, then you need to feel like you have a leg up on everyone else, right?
You know what? I think that's actually really true. I would say like because like of how the conditions are here, Utahns are probably like on balance, probably the best gardeners in the union because of everything that we have to deal with here. When they have successful gardens and people are just like, I don't know anything about gardening. I'm like, but you grew a tomato.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
87 plants total. Well, that was last year, but still.
Did you do 87 tomatoes last year?
Last year, I had 87 tomato plants. It was insane.
Oh my gosh.
Long story in a past podcast that I described. But this year, I only have 40.
Really? Last year, I made the mistake of planting 2 zucchinis.
Oh, no. I have 2 zucchinis, but 2 different varieties, and they're just everywhere. Yeah. All the zucchini. I mean,
even this year, I'm just like, man, I could have planted half a zucchini.
There you go. That's amazing. Okay, I want to talk about my boxwood trick because we have 1 minute left of this episode. For me, I put boxwood in my container plants on my front porch. And I commit to watering them daily, but I've avoided putting them in the landscape because I know they're not going to thrive. But so far, they've done amazing. And it's been a year and a half.
Yeah, boxwoods are good as long as you take care of them. I mean, they need adequate water. You have to watch for spider mites, but they can perform very well, especially if you can protect them from like the winter winds and stuff.
Yes, and I do. The only downside is they smell like cat pee.
Yes, they do.
Boxwoods totally smell like cat pee, and it took me a while to realize there wasn't a cat peeing on the porch. Every time my husband was like, oh, the front door smells like cat pee. It was the beautiful boxwoods I put out for the fall arrangements in containers next to the front door. So there you have it. Thanks for listening, Utah. We love you. We'll be back next week right here on Gardening Utah. Thanks, Cameron.
Thank you.
When you're ready to grow big or go home, make your neighbors green with envy. Get the Gardening in Utah podcast, Gardening Utah, available wherever you get your podcasts and at 860kkat.com/garden.